powerhouse in Jaipur. Well, behind there is an old potato store. About as original as you'll find on this frontage, but on the Esplanade, one of the very few that's left. Not as a potato store, now it's gone to other uses, of course, but I hope to get a good look at it. I'll just start afresh. I'm with your name, Mr. Millar.
Yes.
And I've actually got into one of the lofts of the old potato store. I call it a potato store, but it was more than that, wasn't it? It was more than potatoes.
Agricultural merchants, they were known as. They did all sorts of things.
And this was Terry and Son?
John Terry Limited.
John Terry Limited.
My great-great-grandfather.
Right.
Came to the island from Yorkshire in the late 19th century.
Right.
Had 3 sons, 2 of whom carried on to run the business till just before the war, and they died without male heir, but they had two female children, one of which had my father, so the surname was lost, but my father's mother's maiden name was Terry. She was a Miss Terry.
Do you have got any idea when this was built as a store, when it was built? Any idea?
Yes, it was built in various parts. This is one of the oldest parts we're in now. This faces onto Commercial Street.
Right.
This is listed. We're not allowed to kind of do much with this. Yeah, the actual framework of it, and it's I think the 1860s. This one, I think. Right. Other parts of the building through to the Esplanade, 1890s.
What if you list it? What can happen to it then? What can you do with it?
Well, we can redevelop it, which is going to happen, I think, in fairly short shrift. But we'll have to be governed by what we can do within this space. So they want to keep.
And this part of Preston, this is the oldest part.
This is it's the part that the heritage people or the historic buildings people have shown most interest in.
Right.
I think it is the oldest part. Yeah.
So what did they do here? They had because you just mentioned just before I started filming about they used to finance the potato growers.
Effectively, yes. John Terry's were probably the largest of dozens of merchants that existed all along the Esplanade and commercial buildings. And they were known, all the merchants I guess did it, but John Terry's were large enough and substantial enough to effectively operate almost as the farmers' bankers.
Right.
So they provided the products that the farmers needed to grow their crop in the spring, and then they waited until the farmers brought their produce to town and paid them for the produce and deducted whatever the farmer owed.
Really? So if they had a good season, they were okay. If they had a bad season, they were in trouble.
Correct. Although John Terry's rarely had the bad season because they were, if you like, in the driving seat because they could pay what the market rate was. So it was tough for the farmers, but when the year was good, they had a very, very good year.
I'm told they used to have things like straw. They used to keep up these places because the farmers would want that in the winter. Was that part of the deal?
Yes, absolutely. Further down, we had at one time we owned. This is 8 and 9 Esplanade, 10, 12. 8, 10, 12 Commercial Street runs through. We had 11 and 12. We also had number 5 and I think number 6 at one time. Really? So it was a big outfit at the time.
Did you have trucks of your own to deliver, or was that the farmers there?
Yes, we had motorised vehicles that I remember, but before that, horse-drawn, I think.
Horses.
And some of the entrances downstairs, you can see the evidence of horse-drawn openings, little coins to prevent the wheels scratching the archway, etc. Yeah,
little posts.
Just kept the wheels away.
That's right.
There's also some cobbles down there which were deliberately grooved so that the horses had purchase on it.
Now, so the product the farmers do was spuds and tomatoes later, presumably?
Yes, I'm not sure the timing on it. I mean, outdoor tomatoes were enormous within my lifetime.
Were they?
Yeah, it's receded to nothing now because of world markets and the cost of labour and everything else. It's very labour intensive and quite risky. One hailstorm could ruin the whole season.
Right.
For the
crops,
farmer.
Courgettes, because I know they labour.
Cauliflowers. Courgettes is more recent. I don't remember those as a child, but cauliflower definitely. Daffodils, of course. And then John Terry's used to later on import produce as well as exporting it for the hotels and the local trade and the market and everybody else.
Did they have a local trade for houses, domestic trade, or was that not part of that?
No.
Nothing to all strictly to do with...
Strictly wholesale.
Wholesale,
yeah.
I was by chance, I was reading an article in the newspaper, 1924, 25.
Yeah.
and there was a bank in Nantes went bust, and they used to finance a lot of small Jersey growers. They went bust. Ever heard of them? I don't know who they were.
No, I didn't know that.
No,
Yeah.
it's something I thought, oh, that's okay, because they had a potato crop failure. The blight got them.
Yes.
They started off in March, wonderful season.
Yeah.
By June, everything was dead.
Everything was dead, yeah.
So that's, I don't know what that was all about.
Well, the seasons were very specific in those days, quite different from today. The potato market over here today is that you had to get at the earliest possible crop you could. So you planted as soon as you could, January, February,
right.
And they took about 9 to 12 weeks to grow, the potatoes. So the early south-facing slopes at Letac, some at Roselle, some at Gorey, all over specific little areas were the desired land, right. So that you got the earliest crop.
I don't know if you know the little family in Valley of Earl.
Yeah.
And his grandfather, years ago, he's no longer there at all now, but his grandfather used to sell stuff himself, remarkably small tubs of potatoes,
Yep.
and he used to sell them all over the place, up to Glasgow, all over.
Yes.
Just a few tubs.
Well,
I couldn't see, how's that possible? It's not possible.
I don't know. I mean, John Terry performed that function in those days. The company performed that function in the sense that all the farmers brought their little barrels of spuds.
Right.
John Terry bought them on the weighbridge. He used to weigh the potatoes and then unload them, then weigh the lorry and deduct the two, and you got the weight of the potatoes.
Right.
And then John Terry would give the farmer the going rate for them.
They get a ticket for the amount they got, and that's it.
Absolutely. And some were preferred to others. So Mr. So-and-so's spuds this year looking a bit blighty or a bit lower quality. He's not going to get quite so much money as the gentleman with the quality ones.
Now you can go into a supermarket and buy small potatoes all the year round.
You can. But it was quite different then.
When I was a kid, we used to wait for the new potatoes to arrive because they used to have these mouldy old things that had been buried in the ground, mostly rotten by the time we got February, and a bit later.
Yep.
The first new potatoes, they were really at a premium.
They were, and the key was to beat Cornwall, Pembroke, and Brittany to the Covent Garden market.
Right.
You had to get there before them. That's why I just spoke about early land.
Right.
Get there, get the best prices. And that made or failed a season.
Was there a floor in there, or was that as it was? Was it open to the ceiling, or was there another floor in there? Because that's quite dramatic, isn't it? It's a fabulous space you've got there.
It is. This is a more recent. This is in the last 30 years, a car lift which has been introduced, so as you can bring stuff up to the floors. But these were open lofts up here. I think even that was an open loft between those. You can see the pillars. And so
it's a fabulous space, isn't it?
Yeah, tomato grading took place in here.
Couldn't you?
You could, you could. And all these lofts had cattle feed and corn and all sorts of stuff loaded in sacks and barrels, and there were winches that brought things up and down.
Did Terry's ever be farmers themselves? That they were never...
No, they were never farmers.
And did they own a ship or anything they didn't own their own boat?
Not as far as I know. No. He was a Yorkshireman originally, and he came here and saw a gap in the market to export produce over.
I wonder how they did it before.
To the
If
UK.
you saw the gap, why was there a gap?
Well, I guess it might have been proper agricultural industry. I don't know. Perhaps it was just little market farmers doing it.
It's absolutely fabulous that you're here and you know about it, because this is exactly what I want to know.
Good.
No,
you have these big openings here, which of course open to the road, so that you could
just
drop down stuff with a winch. Some of the winches are still hanging around. This was a trap door, which came from the top floor down to, there's a hole there under there, which came all the way down, and from what I remember, they used to drop ingredients down to a hopper down below to make the cattle feed.
Years ago, I surveyed Le Marcons, where they got a pet shop now.
Yes.
That's a very long, I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah.
They used to do all that mixing of guano.
Yes.
They used to do exactly the same thing. All the gear is still there, was then when I surveyed it. Whether it's still there, I don't know.
Yes.
Exactly the same process.
Yes. Done by gravity, really, just dropping it from the top to the bottom.
Primitive, timber and slides and things.
Yep.
It was brilliant, but it was all still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
Well, you can just, if you can get up some steps, we can just see an old part of the rest of this old building, to get a better view up here.
Well, saying that, so far it's not good. You just catching me out these. Oh yeah.
So this would have been one of the many open lofts. Historic buildings seem to love this structure with the roofing. They say that's very classic.
Simple little trusses.
Yeah, classic trussing from 100 years ago probably.
Yeah.
And this was the main body of the warehouse. There were offices. There was actually a house in the front there where the manager lived. It's still there, but it's been made into flats. But he lived there, and then came down here every morning.
That's another aspect. Quite a few people would have been employed.
Yes.
Where did they all live?
Yes. Well, he lived there, where the others lived in town, around the place.
Around.
Yeah, somewhere around, yeah.
Fascinating.
So it's an L-shaped building, so it comes back here and across where you originally came in. The front of the portion of the L that we don't own is what is now the Jaipur Indian restaurant.
Right.
But it used to be the Customs Hotel.
I remember it well.
So you had the Customs on that side and you had the Clifton Hotel on that side.
Right.
And the farmers came in July or August and took their checks and took the John Terry managers next door for a drink to celebrate the end of the season.
Yeah.
Turned them into quite severe imbibers. But that was what happened. And then the horses used to take the farmers home, tottering their way home on the carts, I think, all the way back to St Wands and everywhere else.
Oh, and all that structure, who looks after the horses, where do they keep the horses, all that stuff, where's it gone? Where's the memory? It's the memory of that.
Well, that's before my time. I remember fleets of vehicles. There was downstairs on the ground floor, there was a pit where the vehicles used to reverse onto, and the workers used to, a bit like a modern garage. It was down there. It's been filled in since I remember. I don't remember anything about horses. That was slightly before my time, but they definitely did have them.
Because they love to show pictures of the old cart horses ploughing fields now, but it's never coming back. It's so nice. No. It looks pretty, doesn't it? But it's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. No. And the same.
What is going to happen to farming? I mean, you observe it. You've seen it all.
I observe it. I'm not involved in the industry, but anymore. But it's hit a level that I think works at the moment.
Right.
The supermarkets control it. They tell the farmers what to do, when to produce the produce, and effectively what they're going to pay them. Quite different from the market that we were born into, which was a market. It was supply and demand. It was.
Was there much competition between tellers and other merchants? Did they compete on price? They did.
Oh yes. Yep.
All right.
Yep. You wanted to get. I mean, I hesitate to suggest there was any kind of Esplanade cartel, but I suspect the merchants made sure that they were all right. But you know, obviously it wasn't in their favour for a farmer to be struggling. But it was the market in Covent Garden and further. I think they used to go to Middlesbrough and all sorts of places in those days.
Well, so that little guy in Valley, he was all over England. I thought, well, there's no money in this. You can't send 6 barrels of potatoes out to Glasgow and make any money. There isn't any.
Don't know how that worked.
Did it.
They did it. I don't know how that worked in terms of being profitable. But
when did Terry's stop?
Early 70s, 1974. From memory, they were turning over, I don't know, £500,000 and making about 300. Because times had changed, markets had changed. The farmers were doing exactly what you've described. Actually, Jersey Produce Marketing Organisation came into being, and some ramification in the market, which was before my time, completely transformed it. And the merchants effectively almost became redundant because the farmer went straight to Covent Garden. And then, of course, Covent Garden changed and supermarkets came in. So it's completely different nowadays, and there were no need for the merchants. And one by one, they either had to change. Terry's changed for a while and became just produce merchants. So they imported tins of pineapples and flour and supplied hotels and restaurants and the market and Lauritia's and whoever wanted them. But they found they couldn't. The overheads were too high.
Who invented that fabulous potato barrel? Such a simple thing. It's a sheet of ply.
Yes, it is. Yes.
What a clever bloody thing that was.
Cylindrical shaped.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
They were tough.
Yes.
Protected what was inside.
Yes.
And everybody wanted one.
Yes.
Didn't they? Every house had a potato barrel in it.
I think we had barrel makers here.
Did you?
I think so. Maybe John Terry's invented it. I don't know, but it was light but strong.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
super bit of kit that was. It was terrific. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have met you.
Pleasure.
You were surprised. I didn't know you existed. I didn't know anything about you, but
There we are.
I've learned a lot. Thanks so much indeed.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mike.